Okay, welcome back to part 3 of our webinar, publishing resources. We're going to talk about things that you can use as you think about getting published. So in terms of finding journals in which to publish, it's always a good idea to ask your faculty or your mentors, what journals do they recommend? Where do they publish? They often have a good sense of the different journals that are out there and which might be best for you to start with. You can also look at key papers or authors that have written in your field and see where they have published. And finally, you can use databases and publishers' websites to get more in-depth details about specific journals. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So it's very important, particularly because there's always new journals coming out. There are just an innumerable amount of journals out there. So you want to be sure that you think about each one in an evaluative capacity as you're deciding where to submit your work. So here are 7 key questions that you can consider as you're evaluating journals. First of all, is the manuscript the right fit for a particular journal? What's the scope of the journal? Look at recent articles that they've published. Do they align with the kind of thing that you're writing about? What subject areas do they cover? What type of articles are there? And do they allow or do they welcome supplemental files if you have that kind of material? Secondly, are there any funder or institutional mandates to consider? For example, have you gotten funding that stipulated your article needed to be published open access? If so, you would want to limit your search to open access journals. Another mandate might be that you publish your data. And so if you have that to consider, make sure that the journal publishes data along with the article. Number 3, is the journal visible in the communities that you want to reach? So who reads this journal? Who is their target audience? Is it indexed in a relevant subject database so that people will be able to discover it? What about the chance of acceptance? Is it reasonable? If your time is limited, you might want to forgo submitting to a journal with a low acceptance rate because that's just going to slow down the process. And if you're not accepted, you have to start over again. Keep in mind that journals with the highest impact metrics can also have the lowest acceptance rates. Number 5, is the journal indexed in the relevant databases? Go ahead and check for yourself. Go into the Copley Library databases, go into the ones that you're wondering if it's indexed in there, put the title of the journal and see what you can find. Number 6, what do the journal metrics reveal? And this is a good thing to keep in mind in terms of taking different metrics into consideration rather than relying solely on one number. So see what the different metrics, if you look at them from different perspectives, what can you tell about that journal? And then finally, is the journal reputable? Does it practice robust peer review? Are there any red flags such as aggressive solicitation of manuscripts, or do they charge a fee just to submit a manuscript? That's a red flag. Think about checking, how long has the journal been around? Is it well established? Do they promise really rapid publication? That may be a sign that peer review is not being employed. So this is also called, journals with red flags or practices that are not legitimate. They can also be called predatory publishers. So you might encounter that term. In terms of journal ethics, again, back to question number 7, is the journal reputable? There's a few things that you can ask yourself as you're scrutinizing it. We talked about whether it's indexed in relevant databases. Another resource is called COPE, the Committee on Publication Ethics. And that's a website that you can go to, and you can actually put in the name of a journal. And if it's enrolled in COPE, it means that it has been vetted through that organization. And that's, of course, a good sign. And the other characteristics that are listed here all have something in common, and that is simply transparency. They are upfront. They tell you who owns the journal, who publishes it, who the editors are, the editorial board. It talks about, it'll be transparent about the peer review that they use, if it's blind. Do they have APCs, the article processing charges? And is that timing, and are those fees clear as to what they are? And then does it provide details about open access licenses and their associated conditions? So the more information that you can find about the journal, the better sign that that is. It shows that they're being upfront and they're being transparent about their practices. And in terms of publishing resources, places that you can go to get more information about journals, I have a few listed here. The first set, these are things that are available through Copley Library. They are subscription-based resources. And the second part here are free and open resources that you can just go to through the internet. And I'll show you a couple of these. Now, Ulrich's Web, that one just basically gives you some basic information about a journal, whether it's peer-reviewed, whether there's an open access option, whether it's electronic or print, etc. Kind of just hits the high points. Cabell's Directories of Publishing Opportunities goes a little bit more in depth. So let's take a look at that one. If you go to the Copley Library website, you go to databases, it's under the alphabetical listing. It's the first one under C. And this is what it looks like. It's really a deep dive. It gives you current contact information and websites for journals. It provides information on publication guidelines, the type of review, the submission process, etc. So if you know the name of a journal, we'll just type in Urban Education. Okay, so here's the title. And if you open that window, you're going to see all kinds of information about it. How many times a year it's published, like I said, the ISSN number. It's been around since 1965. It's a long-standing journal. The acceptance rate is 27%, so it's stiff competition. The time that it takes them to review a manuscript, the time it takes to publication, whether there's a plagiarism screen, there's just all kinds of information. And then usually it also provides you with a link directly to the journal website. So this is a really nice resource where you get quite a bit of information about a journal. Now, Web of Science, this is a platform that's made up of several scholarly literature databases. And Copley's subscription includes Science Citation Index Expanded, Social Sciences Citation Index, and Arts and Humanities Citation Index. And you can also, if you go into Web of Science, you can also go to the master journal list to see all the journals that are indexed in Web of Science. So this is what it looks like. And actually under the Help tab up here in the top right, you can get to the master journal list to look up a journal. And then there's also up here, linked from the Web of Science, is Journal Citation Reports. And Journal Citation Reports gives you information about a journal and its citation trends over time. And this includes what's called the Journal Impact Factor. This is something you might have heard of. The Journal Impact Factor is a measure of the frequency in which the average article in the journal has been cited in a specific year. And it's calculated by taking a 2-year period and dividing the number of times that articles were cited by the number of citable articles. So I'll show you, yeah, here we go, urban education. This is the one we looked up in Cabell's. Okay, again, so you're getting a whole bunch of information about it. And then if you go down a little bit, you'll see this journal impact factor, how it's been trending over time. And this is, like I said, here's how it's calculated with this equation. And you can actually toggle between years too. But just keep in mind that this is one number. The journal impact factor is one number, one metric among many. And so take that, just take it with a grain of salt. And then, like I said here, these resources down here, Think, Check, Submit. This is a good guideline. It sort of walks you through the process of submitting your article to a journal, things that it suggests that you think about. And the DOAJ is the Directory of Open Access Journals. So if you specifically are looking for journals that are open access, that's a good place to go. And Sherpa Romeo, this one I alluded to earlier in the webinar. This is an index of publisher copyright policies. So you can put in the name of a journal here and you can see what they will allow you, what version of a paper they will allow you to deposit into an institutional repository or onto your own personal website, etc., and make it open access. So if that's, you know, of high priority to you to make it available open access, this is a good place to look for the publisher's policies. And now I'm just going to talk a few minutes about copyright and authors' rights. So when you submit an article to a journal and it goes through peer review and, you know, they're getting ready to publish it, they will ultimately present you with a contract for publication. And it's very important that you read this contract closely because traditionally these contracts transfer the copyright from you as the author to the publisher. And so you're relinquishing a lot of rights about how your work is going to be able to be used going forward. However, there's been advances in this realm, you know, within recent years. So you don't necessarily have to do that. There are resources that are available to you to learn more about your rights as an author and to try to enact those rights. So one site is called the Authors Alliance. And if you go to the Authors Alliance, there will be, there's resources, things about like copyright, you know, fair use, publication contracts. This is a really good one. They have a resource about book publication contracts, things learning about author-friendly contract terms, negotiation strategies that can help you. So think about that. Using that resource, that's a good one. And then the other two that I'll like to mention here are the SPARC, Author Addendum, and Creative Commons licenses. SPARC stands for the Scholarly Publishing and Academic Resources Coalition. And SPARC has basically made a template for people who, when they're signing their publication contracts, they want to retain key rights to their work. And so the addendum is just a one-page document that you would fill out, you know, read it closely, see what it's allowing you to do, sign it, and then you would attach this addendum to your publication contract with the journal. There's no guarantee they would accept it. You know, they might come back to you and want to work on some of the terms, but this is something that you can try to use. And Creative Commons licenses, in the case that you're publishing and you are retaining your copyright, if you still retain the copyright, you may want to articulate to users going forward how they can reuse your work. And the Creative Commons licenses gives you a choice. There are 6 different licenses, and you can choose one of these and apply it to your work so that, like I said, users going forward, they know what they are allowed to do in terms of reusing your work. And it goes from the most open or lenient license to the most restrictive. The most accommodating one just requires that they attribute, they give you attribution. And the most restrictive license, they can download and share your works. They have to credit you. They can't change the work in any way, and they can't use them commercially. So this gives you a good option if you want to assert some control going forward over how your work is reused. In many cases with digital USD, authors will choose to apply a Creative Commons license to their USD content.